Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Dr. L. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast. Welcome to the breakdown, all that kind of good stuff. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. Let's make the channel grow and all that kind of stuff, right? Subscribe to the channel and all that. All right, so I want to get into this here because I don't know who this guy Long Island Audit is, and it's not just him that I'm kind of reacting to, or I'm very curious as to this phenomenon about people who go around just filming the police for absolutely no reason and being deliberately provocative. I'm not talking about a situation that run into Walmart or run into at a grocery store or any other place in public. Maybe you see someone getting arrested. You want to stop and help out as much as possible. And if that includes filming to make sure that the police are on the up and up, I actually don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with people going around doing this, right? And then come in your face, and then when you react, then it's then I would consider that being deliberately provocative. And in this video here, that I did, former corrupted cop on what really happened, I said the man was actually being provocative. I think he was. He's going in places, flexing his muscle. And that's it. Listen, I understand it, right? This is my issue with that particular video that I made, or the reaction that I did to it, wasn't so much his response, but why are you going around provoking people? I never said that he was wrong. Go back and watch the video. I never said that he was wrong. Never said he was trespassing. Never said I didn't understand the difference between private and public property. Never said any of the stuff that's been in the comment section. It's all very entertaining. It's all, I would read in the comments just with a smirk on my face. Like, I never said that. I didn't say that. You misinterpreted this. Poster 7 this, poster 7 that. I mean, it's just all comical. I read to you the statutes and all this. People. Somebody said, let me see if I can put it up here. Somebody also said that I didn't address, or I think this is it. Yeah, this is it. I didn't address the journalist here, right? Let's see. Can I read this here? So this says, I happened upon this clip and was looking forward to a critical, impartial analysis from you. While your ultimate analysis appears to be correct, I was correct. I am correct. And I don't know if he watched this particular video, but I know he watched another one of my videos, Long Island Audit. Sean is his name, I guess. Again, I'm not very familiar with the guy. It never said that I was incorrect. I said the cops needed to be trained and to do better. I said that. I said, and I addressed. Well, let me finish reading this. Appears to be, unfortunately, I was disappointed by your innate bias as a former law enforcement officer. We all have innate biases. I talk implicit bias. While your criticism about the police appear to be suggestions for improvement, so he's telling you I was suggesting improvement. You offer no such suggestions about the photographer, but I did. I read to you from the CBJ, and I read from you from Stanford U. I did offer that. Instead, your constant digs about him seem to be to suggest an innate bias towards him and others like him. I offer this as things in this world are cause and effect, were it not for more. And then he goes on about that. And then I wrote, this is actually a decent comment, so I'll respond. So your analysis is that I'm correct. Thanks for saying so. Next, I laid the blame at the feet of the lawmakers who are not being held accountable. Vote them out of office. It was one of the first things I said, right? We go after the cops, postal workers, DMV employees, low-hanging fruit. What about these lawmakers, right? Contrary to what others in the comment section think, I said, I don't have a problem with people recording in public or the police in particular, or recording the police in particular. I have a problem with provocative behavior. He wasn't recording the architecture. He went in there to cause a problem, and he was obliged. I legit don't know if he published the story. Did he, or where is it at? Right? If the story was how cops don't do their job, I mean, that's the story you're doing. I just have a problem with provocative behavior and provocative people from anyone. A boyfriend girlfriend situation, husband wife, a teacher at school. People who provoke people just to do it bother me. I have my right to my opinion, and be able to separate my opinion about how I think life should be conducted, whether it's filming people in public, I'll get to that in a second, or just being provocative, versus what the law says. And I was on the side of the law, just like Sean was. I was correct in my analysis. What was incorrect? I never said that it was the post office was private property. I never said that. I never said people didn't have a First Amendment right. Did you ever hear the news? I've heard about. Of course. What are you talking about? We have an into. Unfortunately, we have, and this is going to sound very 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 bad. I understand it, but we have a problem where people don't have a great deal of comprehension skills. They filter things through their emotions, and they're not actually hearing what someone else is saying. Listen to what they're saying. Point out to me where I said that he was actually trespassing. Point out to where I said you can't trespass in a public place. I never said anything close to those things that are in the comment section. Never said anything close to them. It's all been very entertaining now. Before I did this, I was still wondering. I reviewed these videos. I reviewed these types of videos with my officers. Yeah, when I was a commander, I went through these types of videos because this is not a new phenomenon going around just bothering people, right? They did it at other post offices. I reviewed them with going to other federal buildings, police headquarters, filming all this type of stuff. This was a complete setup, and they fell for it, which was unfortunately, in my estimation, bad on the police officers, even on the postal workers in that particular video. I did offer suggestions for the photographer. I read off articles from the CBJ and from Stanford. That's at Mark 38-46. But let me make it plain for the journalists. Why not just provide the credentials when asked? Right? They don't have to. Before anybody gets in a comment, you don't have to. I understand that. You don't have to. I'm just giving a suggestion. But but let me ask you this. What other group of people really I can't think of any. I can't think of many, maybe any that you can just say, "Oh, listen, I'm a cop, I'm a lawyer, I'm a judge, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a dentist. I'm walking around here. You go walking around security, and you walk around a hospital with a gown on, and they confront you, and you say, "Well, I'm a doctor." Okay, well, confronted by security, and they say, "Well, where's your credentials? I've never seen you before." Wouldn't you be obliged to show them your credentials? I don't understand why that's a problem. And when you read the stuff that I read, it said you can offer them. Why not just be compliant? Oh, we got to resist. We got to do this. Why should they be asking that? Freedom of the press. Are you the press? How do we know that? Right? Everybody's got a YouTube channel now, right? And all this kind of stuff. I'm just saying, just provide that. But again, he didn't have to. And when I read from the DHS, it just said any person. So he's still correct. So separate the law from my opinion. My opinion is, why not just prove it to him? That's my opinion. It's my opinion that rights versus privileges. I, I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get into all that. Again, while you're on YouTube, with all the YouTube channels and people claiming to be journalists, I would not be opposed to the idea that when claiming to be something, they provide evidence. Lastly, yes, I do have a disdain for people who deliberately go around provoking officers or anyone else. Should police be held accountable, know their policies and follow them? Absolutely, no question. But we don't allow firefighters to go around starting fires and then critique the way they put them out. Go around pushing people's buttons to get reactions. Ridiculous and obnoxious, in my opinion. And I'm entitled to have it. No sarcasm intended. I appreciate your comment. Thanks. So this guy, one of the few guys, or one of the few people who actually acknowledged that I was actually correct. So again, my challenge is what in this particular video, this one right here, did I say that was incorrect? I never said the post office was private. I never said any of that. I read to you from the DHS saying you can record people with poster 7 and this and that. Did you read it? I read poster 7. I'm not going to go through that. I read it. You can do it. It says it right there. And people send me other stuff. It says it. Our comprehension skills are really, really down and bad in this country. They really are. When I was going through my doctorate program, yes, I actually have one. When I was going through that program, right? So I was taking my concentration was in criminal justice, and part of that I took a class called Ethical Issues in Homeland Security, and this is where this all comes from. This is where all this confrontation comes from. So we are in a delicate balance between terrorism and safety and security well, safety, security, terrorism, and our own individual freedoms. And this is what we had to discuss. What is government overreach? Is it government overreach for them to be listening to us on our cell phones? Is that government overreach? Is it government overreach for them to do to put up things or demand that we stop filming and all that? And our taxpayers are paying for all this. This is the quandary that we're having. And again, when you understand, where a lot of this is coming from, terrorists film places, they do reconnaissance. They do reconnaissance. So you have to understand that, right? So they do reconnaissance. You can pause all that and read all that, right? Go there and find these articles and stuff. And this is well known within the Homeland Security community and within the criminal justice community. So when people are filming police stations, when they're filming government buildings, look at Oklahoma City and all these other places, when they're doing reconnaissance, people have a right to be concerned about that. Why are you just doing that? And if you're doing a story, why not put everybody at ease and just say, hey, listen, I'm doing a story, this, that, and the other. Why not just do that? So, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You can run around here and all this. So this is my opinion. So understand, this is my opinion. My opinion versus what an officer should do or can do could be two totally different things. There are things I agree with with how the police do things, and there are things I absolutely agree with the public. I'm actually glad that people like this try to hold people accountable, but also I draw the line of provocation. So if you don't understand that line, then I can't help you with that. But I don't just go around. Right. If you get stopped on the side of the road by the police and they just want to search your car and do all this kind of other stuff. Well, first of all, the stop has to be legal and justified. Right. We all get that. Right. You can't be your freedom and movement can't be just infringed upon. Right. And as a black man, believe me, I get it. I understand it. I taught history of police up until the civil rights movement. It was a class that was started post George Floyd and for the state of Connecticut, and I would assume for other states as well, because they wanted to understand the animosity between the black community and the police. So I taught that class, and I'm very much aware of all this stuff, right? So I understand wanting to hold the police accountable. Back to my story. If you are pulled over by the police for a legitimate stop, and they want to now search your car, it's completely illegal. You'd be right to pull out your cell phone and ask for a supervisor and say, look, listen, you want to do something that's completely illegal. I make a distinction between that type of scenario and then going deliberately into DMVs, deliberately in other government places, city halls, refusing to sign in. And these are all things that are on his video, right? Doing these types of things just to be a jerk. Why not? There was one case, he just does this, right? So it was one case, he went to a city hall in Danbury where they asked him, and they wanted people to sign in. I personally have a problem with that too, right? Unless you pass a law saying that this is it, that this is the way it should be, then why are we asking people to do that? And then also, I think that those types of laws should be challenged, but let's do it the right way. So just doing this and just getting on people's nerves and this, that, and the other I'm not going to say it's for no reason, but I have an issue with the provocation of it. So I hope I've demonstrated that as well. One last story about provocation here. This is going rather long here. One last story about provocation. Here's my story about provocation, right? So there was a time in the great state of Connecticut. Where there was we were having an issue with what other people were having issues with as well, as far as other states, I should say, and people walking around with guns on their hips on the outside, right? Plain view carry, or whatever it's called, non-concealed carry, or whatever it's called, right? People just walking around with big cannons on their hips and stuff. So I happened to be working first shift at this time, so I go into a little hot dog place at the time, right? So I'm in this hot dog place and I'm eating, right? Now I'm sitting halfway between the door and the counter, right? So this couple walks in there right after me, and they see me, right? And then they start talking to each other. I could see the guns on their hips, right? And they start going over, and then now they're looking at the menu. And I knew from the distance that I was at, where I was sitting at, they're standing right next to me, looking at the menu. I know they can't see it, and I got 20/20 vision. And if I can't see it, I know you can't see it. I know you can't. I mean, you got 10, 10, 5, 5, whatever it would be. Or I'm like, okay, I know what this is. This is deliberate provocation. You're standing next to me. And finally, when they had to go order, they had to go stand next to, they had to go closer to the counter so they can actually see the menu and actually place the order. They were deliberately being provocative, standing right next to a police officer so I could see the gun on their hip and trying to get a reaction out of me. But I knew what the log was, and I knew that they were deliberately being provocative, right? So I didn't ask him. You as officers, you got to know what this is. You got to know what this is, and you got to be able to respond accordingly. So therefore, I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. Now, some of these videos that he's putting up are 4 years old, 5 years old. So hopefully, in that 4 years or so, that the all federal buildings, city buildings, municipal buildings, police departments are all receive training about this type of thing, right? And don't fall for this type of okey doke from these types of people. That's my point, right? But again, I never said he was wrong. I never said he was wrong. I never said, and I think that I think in the other video I showed, I think he did get off in a technicality because they're wrestling because it was wrestled over jurisdiction. Do you really have jurisdiction to do what you're doing and to say what you're saying and to make this arrest and to be here and this, that, and the other, right? It was a federal building, it's a post office. Okay. So that's all that. All right. So I think I made my case there. So do your homework and diligence, not just about me, but listen carefully what people are saying. Rewind stuff, listen to what they're saying, and if you're going to comment, put the mark in it. I said this, and put it in context. People wrote in there, oh, you don't know the difference between public and private. I was in one part, I was reading from the CPJ, the whatever professional journal. It wasn't me saying, I was reading from it. Did you not see me reading from it? All right. Let's get into this particular video here. I have not watched this, so this is a guy interviewing him. So I don't know what this is about. So we'll get into it here. I'm going to speed this up. I don't know. I tend to listen to things a little bit faster here, a little bit of higher speed, because I don't want to be here all day. So we'll put this in 1.25, see if we can hear it and understand it. Claiming fair use. We're doing this for educational purposes. Oh, and by the way, did anybody actually take that video and send it to, you can email some community college professor, you can look up any professor and just email them, say, listen, here's some crackpots talking on the internet. Is anything in here that he said incorrect? Did anybody do that? Well, I challenge you to do that, right? Oh, I am a criminal justice instructor. Doesn't mean I'm correct, but just run it by somebody else, right? Because there's nothing in there. I was definitely correct. All right, so let's watch this here. And Long Island Audits talks about his past and why he's actually a journalist. Let's see here, and this comes from the American Cop Watcher Project. So the American Cop Watcher Project, Long Island Audit, speaks about his past and why he's actually a journalist.
Thank you for answering that question, because I know that's been a big debate in the cop watcher community, the audit community. So when someone says, well, you go to a building, you film it, people come out, they are upset with that, and they say, well, that's not journalism. What would you say to them about that?
Well, the story is every single time people are like, what's your story? The story is every single time, how do public officials react to a journalist engaging in journalistic activity, which is recording and documenting for matters of public interest, doing FOIA requests, checking up the salaries, investigating overtime. There's a lot of different avenues that First Amendment auditors, and again, I'm not the spokesperson for First Amendment auditors, or I tend to work alone, and I can only speak for myself, but I investigate. And once I find something, I continue to investigate. If somebody violates my rights, it's not just a video and it goes away. It becomes a series where I go to internal affairs. I sit down with them. I record it. I show people the internal affairs process, the FOIA process. A lot of people don't know this. They don't teach you this in school. You need to learn how to get this access to these documents, how to handle these internal affairs. This is like an educational journalistic endeavor that I'm engaging in, that I'm trying to educate the public and give this information to the public as a whole.
So Taya had this question. What made you decide to do this in the first place? Like, when did you say, I'm going to pick up a camera and shoot this building? And I think it's very informative and interesting that public officials will come out and confront you just for filming, because I think that says something about the power structure in this country, because everyone should be able to film a public place, no matter what they're doing. But anyway, what was the first gave you the idea to go into a library, go in somewhere and shoot? What started that with you?
Yeah, so I used to watch First Amendment auditors and watch these kind of body camera footage, cops, everything on YouTube that
Yeah, I mean, so this is not new. It's been around, and why? I mean, this has got to become part of training, not only to how to deal with these auditors, what the law is, what the rules are. Can these people record? Can they film? Can all this? We got to start doing that, right? I mean, whether it's private security or security hired by a particular place, you got to start doing that, right?
About law enforcement interactions. I thought it was interesting. I thought that some of them went about it the wrong way. I didn't agree with a lot of them. I support everybody's First Amendment right to curse, scream, and yell at the police. You can do that all you want. I support it. It's part of our constitutional rights. I just think that there was a better way to do it, or a different way to do it, a different approach.
I don't know if it's a part of the Constitution. People want to say that you can't breach a cop's peace. That's been challenged. I'm pretty sure it's been over. From my recollection, it's been overturned. Not so much overturned, but you just can't go around swearing at police, particularly in a public place where you're causing a disturbance, and think, okay, I'm talking to a cop, I can just swear at them. So that's incorrect.
To go about doing it. I was a logistics director for a manufacturing company, basically just a warehouse manager for a cosmetic company, and I was furloughed during COVID, and I was at home with nothing to do, and I've never seen anybody do it in my area with my Suffolk County Police Department, and I have no animus towards them. I actually, again, my views are that law and order is necessary in our society.
Precisely. Just bored. So I'm bored. I'm just going to be deliberately provocative. This is me saying. This is my opinion. I'm entitled to have it. Right? He didn't get pulled over by the police and recognize that there's an issue and a problem with this. And I've interviewed people who've done that, who said, listen, I encountered the police. There's a guy from Madison, Wisconsin. His son was tragically killed by the police. I interviewed him, and he had a very serious problem with the process about transparency, getting information, not only from the police, but from the prosecutor in the particular case. And to my knowledge, he's still fighting that fight today. And he has a problem. That this is not this guy. This guy just said he's bored. All right. That's what I have a problem with, deliberately being provocative. And I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I'm not saying that officers shouldn't be held accountable. That's not my stance at all.
Important. I just believe that law enforcement officers should be held to a high standard. They should be held to at least the same standard as we the people, as the public. So I went there and I was filming. They had some military vehicles. I thought that was interesting. I was filming all their vehicles, just walking around the parking lot, the publicly accessible areas, and they tried to jump me. They got right around me, pulled out their badge, trying to grab my camera, making furtive movements behind me, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, I don't consent to searches or seizures. I was just stuttering. I didn't know what to say, what to do, and it kind of was like, wait a minute, like, you're supposed to protect and serve me. Like, why are you treating me like I'm a criminal when I'm not engaged in criminal activity? And it was definitely concerning behavior. And you think I would just say, well, that was
again. So why is there this issue again? Why is there this issue that people have with them filming? Again, we look at Oklahoma City, we look at other places, and we understand that these people do reconnaissance. We don't know who you are. Schools, right? We don't know who people are. So people just running around, and this is one of the comments that was in the section that I did. Man, and I never said people don't understand sarcasm. I get that. Taking umbrage with the fact that I just said people just going around just whipping out just cameras, just recording stuff. When you're just doing it for no reason, then people will be like, yeah, okay, what's up with this dude? Why is this recording everything? And the building that he was at in the particular video I was talking about, it's a beautiful building. The architecture and all that is definitely beautiful. If he just would have said, listen, I have a right to film, and I have a right to be, I have a right to be here. I'm just taking pictures of the interior, the foyer, and all that, which he has a legal right to do. I went through all that. I don't think that any of this would have been an issue. But the issue is the provocative nature that people are doing this with, deliberately being combative, deliberately being confrontational, deliberately being provocative, right? So should the officers handle it differently? Yeah. So the journalists handle it differently? Of course. There's things to get there are things to get what we want. I'm just talking about the way we go about them. So.
Interesting and stop, but it kind of lit a fire to where I was like, you know what? I want to expose every single one of these people who treat us like garbage. Who violate our rights. I want to expose every single one of them for the world to see. And at the time, nobody was really watching me. But my channel, my platform on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, it all blew up. No idea how, it just did. And as where we are today, 4 years later.
Well, were you surprised that just having a camera would elicit and this has happened to you more than once, where you have a camera. I was just watching your video. I think you were in Larchmont or something, and you just had a camera, and people just seem to go nuts. Does that surprise you? And why do you think they respond that way?
I think they respond that way because they're ignorant of the law. They're ignorant of what their duties are. A lot of officers I've seen, and I do trainings with law enforcement agencies across the country, seminars, district attorneys' offices. I just did one in Savannah, Georgia, at a district attorney's office. I have another one coming up on North Carolina, at the police department.
And what are you training them on?
So First Amendment auditors, how to engage, how to react to it. I go and I give seminars, 2-hour seminars with them. We have conversations, ride-alongs, command staff meetings. I want to help bridge the gap between law enforcement.
What do you say to them when you say, like, so you see a guy with a camera? What's your advice to them if you see some guy filming, you don't know why? What's your advice?
So it depends on the scenario. If somebody called them and said, "Hey, some guys out here filming the camera," they have to respond. I understand that, so go respond. You respond. You can either choose to educate the person and say, "Hey, what else is he doing besides filming?" and then explain to them why filming is constitutionally protected, how it is constitutionally protected, and he's not doing anything wrong. Engage in a dialogue with the person. Don't just say, "Let me see your ID." Engage in a dialogue. "Hey, sir, how are you? You just taking some pictures today? Mind if I ask why?" "No." "Okay. Have a great day, sir," and move about your day. It's actually very.
No, well, that would be great for the terrorists. Again, this is I'm just saying that this is the dilemma that we are having as a society. Again, this is the dilemma that we are having as a society. You gotta go. It's either your rights. I don't want to say it's either or, but it seems as if it's either your rights or your personal freedoms, and this is sometimes at a loggerhead in the junction head. Now, his idea about just rolling up and just asking people for ID. Well, you may be being suspected of a crime. Know your state laws, and if you're being detained and being that they have a reasonable articulable suspicion that you are committing a crime, then you might be subject to provide ID. So you might be, depending on your state. So be careful about that.
And I tell this to them. It's very quite simple. It's when you let your ego. I think the biggest problems in law enforcement is ego and the lack of accountability, and it goes hand in hand. And I believe ego comes with being undereducated on our constitutional rights. Because if you got a guy like me who's saying, "Hey, I know what you don't have reasonable articulable suspicion to demand my ID," and he's like, "What? You know how many law enforcement officers have no idea what that is? And
Is that true that a lot of them don't know reasonable?
They have no idea. That is like the foundational aspect of their job, and they're like, "What's that?" And it blows my mind that they have no idea. Like, that's what you need in order to make contact with somebody and get their ID and do these kinds of things.
Well, what grade would you give the average?
That's a little bit erroneous right there. You can make contact with anyone. You need reasonable articulable suspicion in order to to demand their identification and or to stop and detain them and question them. A brief summary questions, roadside questions, if you will. So that is, again, people tend to speak fast, and there's a little bit more clarification that needs to go along with this. And I think a lot of times people watch these particular videos and then think the actual cops who do this type of thing, or who actually teach this type of thing, don't know. Is it true that some cops don't know? Probably, and sometimes you have to remind them. Here's what needs to be in a report. Here's what we need to do to stop someone. Here's what we need. Here's the elements of the crime. Here's what we need, right? Here's what the law says, right? So you need professors to tell them what the deal is, what the real is, right? So and this former warehouse manager is now going around educating police officers when they should know that for themselves. But there's a lot of training. There's a lot of training that is lacking within law enforcement. There's a lot of training that's lacking in law enforcement.
Law enforcement officer in terms of their constitutional comprehension skills, like how, from your experience, how well do they know the Constitution?
Not at all. I believe that law enforcement officers, I would have to give as a whole. Again, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. I've made a lot of contacts, relationships with departments, and there's a lot of good people, but I would say that the system itself is a systemic problem that they fail to educate. They teach them how to point their gun and shoot. They teach them how to pull out their taser, how to operate their taser, how to use of force. But the constitutional aspect, and I've heard this from law enforcement agencies across the country, is like, it's just not there. They don't have a robust constitution, or they just go over really quick. Fourth Amendment, you can't search somebody's car without consent. But it's not a robust training program when it comes to concept. They're not lawyers, so they don't know about case law. And then also things are changing constantly. There's case law that changes the way laws are implemented. The concept
he's not incorrect about that. In fact, I taught a criminal justice course, and I had received the I received the syllabus from someone else in the course materials, And I changed it all. It was an introduction to criminal justice class, and I changed the entire program, particularly the first 8 weeks or so, because I had to introduce them. Here's the Constitution. Here's the three branches of government. Here's what this is. Here's what this says. Here's your city government. Here's your state government. Here's your local government. Again, I had to break it all down. These people and the students in the class had no idea, right? So if you were in that class, you got a full comprehensive view of what that is. And then I went through all these amendments. Okay, we're going to stop there and pause here about the First Amendment. We're going to stop here and pause here about the Second Amendment. We're going to pause here about the Fourth and Fifth and Sixth and Seventh and Eighth Amendment. We're going to pause here and talk about this and what this means in your everyday life. So even if you don't become a police officer, you can know your rights in all that, right? So he's not wrong about that.
Constitution is interpreted, so they have no knowledge of it, because at the end of the day, a lot of the times they're just doing what they want and they get away with it. Not every day they run into somebody like me who's going to push back. When they go up to somebody like, let me see some ID, the normal person's just going to give them ID, right? They're just going to say, hey, you take my ID. Yeah, sorry, officer, so sorry. But when you got somebody's like, for what? Because I told you to. No, that's not how that works. What do you mean? So again, it's in action. In practice, they're not really getting the training that they or the lessons that they need, because people roll over and they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, I would be remiss not to not state that this is something that is afforded now because of the use of technology, where we can actually see the interactions. I guarantee you, if particularly he looks, I think his last name is Reyes. So a Hispanic male such as himself in the 1960s trying to pull this, or in the 1970s, or a black male such as myself, it would not have gone well. So with the advent of technology, we are in a different place where we can hold these types of people accountable more than ever.
And it seems like once you bring up the Constitution or the constitutionality, they seem to double down on their power, so to speak. Is that something you've seen a lot?
Yeah. So, they all take oaths to uphold the Constitution. And normally when you bring up the Constitution, it's kind of like, oh, you're one of those. And it's like, you're that guy, the Constitution. It's like, yeah, it's important. You swore an oath to uphold it. Yeah, it's very important. That's what keeps us from going into an authoritarian government as opposed to a democracy. So let's take it seriously.
Now, people have tried to discredit you online, say you have a criminal record, other things like that. How do you respond to this?
Well, I just found out today that Brian Fahey would have had a criminal record if he wasn't prosecuted. I've been arrested 12 times while auditing. 12, 13. I'm losing track.
Any times without auditing, where you weren't auditing, just something else that happened in your life? Or?
Yeah. So 13 years ago, I was arrested for attempted robbery back when I was 20 years old.
Come on, dude. Oh my. Listen, I don't go around. I'm not the type to go around looking people up. I didn't look them up. I do know that somebody sent me something concerning the video that I did, and in the comment section they said, "Oh, check out this particular case number." I looked it up, and it was actually from Danbury, Connecticut. It wasn't Waterbury; it was from Danbury, Connecticut, where he did the same thing. He walked into a place and antagonized and I'm using that word deliberately, antagonized, the security guard there because he wanted him to sign in, and eventually, he was arrested, and then he actually paid the fine, which means he pled guilty, and then tried to appeal it, and he was denied that. So listen, he's obviously making mistakes in all that kind of stuff, right? I'm not the type also to hold one's past against him, but this, there's got to be a better way and better method about going about trying to get your rights down in the rights of all people versus this deliberately provocative type of behavior.
And I was held accountable. There's a difference. I did not hold any animus towards the police. I did not say, hey, you guys, you did this to me. No, I was a man and I took accountability. Yes, there's always reasons and outside factors, growing up without a father, that played a major role in my lifestyle and what I was engaging in without that structure, hanging around the wrong people, which is why I tell my kids now, you have to be very careful who you're hanging around with, because I'm not a career criminal. I've never been I'm a great guy. I know that. I know I have good morals, but you make a mistake and a bad decision, you have to own it. I like to say bad decision, not a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a bad decision. It was a horrible decision. And I was held accountable for it. But why are law enforcement officers held accountable for theirs? I know a lot of law enforcement officers that tell me, I could have had a criminal record, but I got away with it. Or they let me go. They gave me a smack on the wrist. I unfortunately didn't. I was held fully accountable.
Well, let me ask you a question. It seems like you can't be redeemed in this country, that, you make a mistake when you're young and then people want to hold it over your...
Law enforcement needs to be held accountable. I don't have any issue with that. I don't have any issue with that.
Your head. Do you think that's kind of a problem in this country that we need to forgive people, or if they take accountability?
Yeah, I think. Listen, I'm not looking for redemption from anybody watching, anybody.
So this is another concept that we talk about in my criminal justice classes and my psychology or forensic psychology classes that I teach. This idea about holding people accountable, number one, and number two, what happens after redemption, right? How do we reintegrate them into society, et cetera, right? So this is it's a complex thing, right? Because we want to hold people accountable. We want to make sure that they don't that they do become different people and that they can move on. But how do we actually do that? Um, um, how do we actually do that without smearing them or tarring them or painting them with a scarlet letter for the rest of their life? This is a difficult concept that we're trying to wrestle through. And again, this is why I say we got to look at the legislature as well. I mean, it's easy, it's low hanging fruit to go after the cops. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And I have recommendations about how to fix that concerning law enforcement. Obviously, he can probably help as far as bring me in to speak. You can bring in, different training, longer training. 6 months is not enough time to train a police officer. Not in today's time. It's not enough, right? And then after that, I think that all police officers within 5 years of your employment should be required to get a bachelor's degree, period, right? And a lengthy and part of that should be a lengthy constitutional class.
That supports me. I don't need redemption. My family, my friends, they know
class about the Constitution, I should say.
Know who I am. They know the morals that I have, the integrity that I have, who I am as a person, my children, my wife. So I'm not looking for redemption from anybody. But I think it is a problem when you judge somebody based on something that they have done before. Look at the content of their character today. Is that somebody that you want to look up to today? Don't worry about 13 years ago. They always try to discredit me, law enforcement agencies, and these law enforcement agencies that I speak at and I do trainings with and ride-alongs with, they know that. They have access to all of that, and they accept me as I am, and they know that I am a good person, and they know that I'm doing the right things. Now, one bad decision doesn't dictate your entire life.
And so how do you feel when you're doing these trainings? You've been on the other side where they're like angry at you, but then suddenly they're listening to you.
Taking pictures.
Yeah, what does that feel like?
Hey, Mr. Reyes, let's take a picture. Let's go out to dinner. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement who really support me, and it's great. It makes me feel great. It really does. It makes me feel great that, listen, I'm doing something good here. I'm doing something good that people are being receptive to, and that are able to, appreciate what I'm doing, because I have the best intentions in the world. I have nothing against law enforcement. I want law enforcement to be a high standards institution, not a low standards institution.
Do they pay you for these things?
So they offered to pay me for each one of them. I declined payment. I provide my own travel to each and every one of these areas, and I declined any sort of payment from them.
Wow. And why is that? Why wouldn't you just take the money and be like, hey, I've earned this. I've been arrested 12 times.
So I don't take the money because, number one, I don't want to put I don't want to take away from their budget for other things. I'm sure they have other things to do. I don't. Not so much that I don't need the money. I make a decent living on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else. I am not like some mega billionaire or even a millionaire or anything like that, where, I believe that when making the
Man, if you don't do anything else, man, you can start a YouTube channel. You get yourself a niche.
amount of money I make now, and being in the tax bracket I am now, paying all these taxes, it just opened my eyes to, because I came from nothing. We're putting on a jacket in my house because my mother couldn't afford to, put oil in the boiler, rice and eggs every day. So I came from absolutely nothing. And now that I have what I have, I realize that these millionaires, multimillionaires and billionaires, they're just the most greedy people in the world. Like that is the major thing. It's not about, I tell people on my channel, it's not about left and right. That's nothing to do with left and right. It's about up and down. It's about up and down. It's about the people with money and power. And not me. I don't have my money's like $50 to these people, and I still go on vacations. I still travel to the country. I'm able to do these trainings at my own cost. So
that is true. That is true. I absolutely agree with that. That it's not about left and right, not about black and white. It's about capitalism and the greed at the top. I wholeheartedly agree with that. The reason he probably did what he did at 20 years old is because he was poor. Right. Yes. Okay. Having a father in a home and this, that, and the other, but there is a financial, sociological, socioeconomic component to why people commit crime. Absolutely.
Imagine if they just gave a little bit more to on their side, what they can do for United States or the humanity as a whole.
So, I mean, what? Amen. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, so you think that one of the problems in this country is wealth inequality, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Wealth inequality. That it's the top 1% of people in this country. You have 80% of people living paycheck to paycheck, having to worry. I was one of those people living paycheck to paycheck, not worrying. How am I worrying about paying my rent this month? Especially where I'm from on Long Island, you can't rent a basement apartment for less than $2,200 a month to live in a 1-bedroom basement. I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching something the other day. They were talking about people working full time. There was a lady who was talking about people working full time. There are only whatever they're making, 20, 25, $30,000, whatever the minimum wage is. If you work full-time minimum wage, that you can, there are only 6 counties in the United States where you can get a 1-bedroom apartment living on it. And that's just to get into the apartment. What do you got? You still have to eat, buy clothes, transportation to and from work, utilities, right? Maybe you want to watch Netflix from time to time. It's again, I agree with him. It's wealth inequality that is it's just bananas right now.
How people are affording it. Sometimes I'm like, do I live in a simulation? Like, because how are you making $2,200 a month? Because I couldn't afford that back when I was making $70,000 a year as a manager. That it was impossible. I was living in that basement apartment for a lot cheaper than $2,200, but I couldn't afford it. I was driving a car where I had to put water in my radiator every 5 miles. Like, it roll up windows. Like, this is the life that I lived. And now that I see the other side of it, to where I'm making decent money, I realize, wow, this is a problem. Because when you're working, you're not really worrying about the Elon Musks, the rich, the billionaires and multimillionaires, and you're not really, they're rich. You just see them as rich. But once you realize just how rich they are, and you have that kind of scale on how rich they are, you're like, wait a minute. And they're trying to take every nickel and dime and every percentage point in taxes, trying to save everything, getting tax breaks for their company, it's all about money. It's all about money. From health insurance to, you have the middlemen of health insurance. Why? Like, why are they making billions of dollars every year as a middleman? Like, couldn't we just put that back into because government's going to mess it up? Why do we accept that government's going to mess it up? Yeah. Like, I don't understand.
And that's why I wish that more people would target the government, right? Not target them in a violent way, but go after that's the issue, right? When they, student loan debt is an issue, right? But we have billions of dollars to give to Ukraine and to Israel and to other places, right? This is a problem. This is a problem. So, I appreciate him saying this. And, there is enough to go around in this country, is that people, they just choose not to, they just choose where the money goes. And of course, the people at the bottom are struggling with this.
And, it's interesting because I was thinking about this in regards when I was watching your video. Pulitzer, the guy with the Pulitzer Prize, used to be a horrible gossip guy. He would sneak into people's apartments and do crazy stuff, and yet now he's a Pulitzer Prize. And so it's interesting to watch people like you. I feel like you're kind of inventing a new form of journalism. Do you feel like you're out there innovating? I mean, this is a softball, but are you a journalism innovator in some ways? Because you come up with things like, I would never go and put a big screen and go into a neighborhood. I'm just not going to do that. You feel like you're part of an innovative part of journalism?
So, it's journalism and activism, right? It's kind of a combination of both. And I am being an activist on behalf of the people as a whole, not just myself, as a people of the whole, for our constitutional rights. So yeah, the quick story about the billboard truck is the only reason I have a billboard truck is because I own one, is because of government corruption. I rented one for a protest, and they sent felony subpoenas to the billboard truck company investigating this felony crime that didn't exist to intimidate them. And it worked. They said, we're not renting you the billboard truck. We're not messing with the district attorney's office over here in Nassau County. So I went and bought one. I raised money. I took out loans, and I bought my own billboard truck. But yeah, I use it as a tool, an informational tool, to be able to highlight corruption. It's better than me holding a sign out there. It's huge. It's put videos on it, audio, and I could drive it around everywhere. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. So it's great. And when people are like, oh, you're not a real journalist. What makes a real journalist? Is the journalist like an ABC News or a local Fox News reporter who just repeats what their editor tells them to? Is that a journalist? A parrot who repeats what their bosses tell them to do, who writes their story, and then their story completely changed? I've seen it. I've talked to real journalists, and they write a story, and then their editor says, nope, change this, change that, change this. I want it to sound like this. That's not real journalism. You're just parroting what these, again, billionaires who own these media companies are telling you they want the narrative that they want you to put out there, whether it's right or left.
Yeah. And I mean, why do you think people don't trust that process? Is it because they feel like the corporatists are running? Why don't people trust, your local Fox affiliate more than they would trust you? Why do you think you've been able to find that audience that would normally maybe have watched mainstream media, but now it's switched to you? What do you think?
I'm not disagreeing with that. I follow independent media much more myself. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. So I don't disagree. Corporate media has been corrupt. They are in the banks. I heard someone say something about they use a pejorative term, prostitution. That was the term they used, prostitution, right? Because they are prostituting themselves for the overlords, and it's the press. So we need more independent press.
difference between the two of you?
I think they don't trust the mainstream corporate media because, again, there's too many levels to it. I'm one man. I read my comments. I interact with my community. They email me. I email them back. I've researched stories for them. They see me as somebody who is investigating, at least I think, this is my opinion. They see me as somebody who is investigating on their behalf, as opposed to, we have a 3-car pile up, things that are important to talk about, but no one's talking about police overtime. No one's talking about, why? Because what happens is, what I've, in my experiences, is these local journalists who are, they're very adverse to,
I'm curious about his concept about police overtime, and if he understands how that works. I've never seen any of those particular videos, and I'm not going to go back and watch every single one of them. I have a life too, and I'm not going to research all that unless you want to pay me to do it. But police overtime is because there's a need, right? People aren't at work. We need somebody to fill in for this particular day. Police overtime is, police services are 24-hour operation. If somebody calls out sick, somebody's on vacation, somebody has to fill in for that particular role for the day. And if one person is getting more overtime than another, then a union can look into that and figure out, why is one person getting more overtime? But as long as the overtime is fair, then that's not an issue. It seems as if, oh man, this guy's racking a bunch of hours as working overtime. Well, here's your choices and options as the public. You can either not require them not to hire individuals. That means your 911 calls and other calls for service may go unanswered because we don't have the people to work there. And again, as long as it's fair, then there's nothing that can be done about it. Some officers work more overtime than others. Some are always outside the house. They're working 40, they work their 40 hours, plus they work 20 hours, 30 hours of overtime. As long as the other person somewhere else has opportunity to work that, then it's not an issue. It would be an issue if they're not there. So those are the options, right? Make sure it's fair. And if you don't like one person getting it all, you want to shut it off, but then somebody else might not work the overtime. So then what do you do, right? Or you can just say, okay, we're gonna, we have generally 5 cars working. We're gonna go down to 4 cars or 3 cars. Well, at what point are we not going to be able to meet the needs of the community by answering the calls for service? What point are we putting our officers in danger because there's not enough backup to help individual officers? So those are considerations. I don't know if he's ever looked at that. I don't know if he's answered that question, but those are questions that need to be answered when you talk about police overtime in particular.
Don't want to criticize the police. Why? Because then the police aren't going to allow them into their little special functions. They're not going to be able to get the tips on the robberies and the car crashes and the kidnappings. They're not going to give them that inside access that these departments give them when they play along.
So you being completely independent, who holds you accountable? Like, how are you held accountable in your mind?
Yeah, so I'm held accountable by the viewers. So the viewers, again, it's open comments. I don't block anybody. They can criticize me all they want. At the end of the day, I'm held accountable by my friends and the people that are closest to me, and also my viewers and supporters, but mainly the people that I trust, because there's a lot of people on the internet, that just say crazy things, and I get it. They threaten me. They threaten law enforcement. They're on both sides of it. I like to think that I'm friends with attorneys, cops, and they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, I don't like how you handle.
So that's another reason why I again, in the comment section of the other video that I played, filming people and this, that. No, I don't. This is my own personal opinion, not what the law says. Be very careful about what you're commenting on. I don't think that people should. I don't think that people should be recorded and then uploaded to YouTube without their consent. I'm not talking about a passerby in a video like this. That's not my point. My point is, you're just going around there just interviewing people or commenting on people and just putting them up in public places. I just don't. That's why I have an issue with that. I have an issue with that. I grew up in a time where we had the yellow pages, right? The big thick book where people's phone numbers at. And next to the phone number sometimes with people's addresses. I thought that was, as a kid, I thought that was crazy. Like, why would you put somebody's phone? Why would you put somebody's address? Somebody can just look us up and then come to our house. Why was that legal? I also don't believe that the cell phone should be used as a surveillance tool. I don't think the government should be reading our emails and text messages. I don't think that I don't think any of that, right? I'm as in a former police officer, I'm as out there as probably some people could ever imagine. So I don't think you got to be able to look people up online and dox them. I think all of that is correct. I think all of that is an invasion of privacy, and I don't think any of it should be allowed. Here's something else that I think about police officers and privacy. I don't think that people's names should be placed in the paper if they were arrested. I don't think people's names should be placed in the paper if they were arrested. If they were convicted, yes, but not just arrested. Why would you put somebody's you're innocent until proven guilty? Why is your name in the paper because you got arrested? I don't agree with that. I don't agree. That's my opinion. It's my opinion. And I can have one.
This situation, or hey, keep doing this, or hey, try this differently. And I'm open for criticism, open for counseling from people. I love to learn, and I love to learn from people. The person I've learned from the most is probably my attorney, and now my best friend Jacob Uriel, former prosecutor for 15 years in Brooklyn, now criminal defense attorney, very educated man, very wise man, and he's taught me a lot about interacting with the public, about how I go about audits, how I go about looking into things, how I don't want to jump the gun, how I don't want to think something's a conspiracy when it's not. just to look at it objectively and be a critical thinker, because I believe that the death of nuance and the death of critical thinking in our country is what is making the country it is today.
That was very well said. Last question, because you said
that was absolutely very well said, and that was what I tried to elucidate at the beginning of this conversation that we're having. That there's a lack of critical thinking. When you go back and watch the video that I referred to earlier, I didn't say any of the things that people thought I said. I didn't say any of that. I didn't say the post office is private property. I didn't say that this man had done anything wrong. I didn't say anything. Go back and read the comments, and then watch the video and say, where did he say that the post office was private property? When did he say this? When did he say that? When I talked about criminal trespass, I never said the man was trespassing. I said that this is what the police officers were called to investigate. They were called there to investigate somebody who's unwanted for whatever reason in there, and that would be what we are investigating. Now we're dealing with a man who's causing a disturbance, who's videotaping, and we asked him to leave. That is all. That could be all. Somebody asks you to leave is criminal trespass. So now, as an officer, I show up. Here's a guy who's causing a problem. He's videotaping in a building, and he shouldn't be allowed to do that, or he shouldn't be doing that. And we asked him to leave and turn off his camera. He's not going to do that. That is what officers walk into with their frame of thinking, and it's going to take critical thinking from the officers as well to say, first of all, do we have jurisdiction here because it's a federal building? Second of all, do we have jurisdiction here concerning him turning off the camera? Is that a crime? Can he do what he's doing? Second of all, do you have the right to ask him to leave if he's not doing anything wrong? Those are the critical questions that need to be asked in that scenario. And I didn't say that this man was doing any of that. If you watch the video, and some people turn it off after 3 minutes, shows you how much tolerance and willing to get to the truth that people have, right? If you turn it off, you didn't listen to my monologue at the end where I plainly said that he did nothing wrong. That he never should have he never should have been asked to turn off his camera. He wasn't trespassing. I said it. So again, if you have information and proof saying that I said something differently, put it on here. Okay. A few more minutes of this.
talking about learning. What is one thing you've learned in this whole process that you want people to know, like something you've learned from your side of the camera, from being in these experiences? What have you learned that people should know?
I think the most valuable thing that I've learned and the most eye-opening thing that I've learned is when I first started out, a police officer would talk to me a certain way, disrespectfully, grab at my camera, do something that I found egregious. And I'd be like, you're going to get fired. And I was just very ignorant. Now I look back and I laugh. Like, I was very ignorant when it comes to the level of corruption in government. I thought like, oh, he called me an asshole, he cursed me out, because silly me, I thought they would have higher standards than, a Walmart door greeter or a McDonald's employee. I thought that they would have higher standards than that, because if a Walmart door greeter, they spat in my face, I'm pretty sure they'd be fired on the spot. But apparently you get to retire with a golden parachute paid by taxpayers. And that's what I've learned the most, is that it is.
Well, I'm going to leave it off here because I don't like stealing all the people's content. But he retired because he put the time in, and contrary to what you see on TV, right? Oh, we're going to take your pension away from you. I mean, I don't know about other places, but particularly here in the Northeast, they're not going to take. You put the money in. I mean, you can retire. Now, if you retire under while going through an internal investigation, then you can't become a police officer anywhere else. So that is something you have to consider. So I'm going to leave it up there. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions. Listen, again, I can appreciate holding people accountable. I can appreciate all that. I don't like. I'm still going to maintain. I don't like provocative behavior, but this is this man's bread and butter. Listen, you shift and pivot from one thing to another, and he's obviously doing well, and good for him. He's going out about going to places, going to police departments, trying to correct erroneous and negative and bad behavior and try to bridge that gap between them. And yes, there is. When I taught criminal justice, again, when I took over other people's programs and stuff, I didn't make massive changes. I'm not teaching this. I'm not teaching this because these students are going to walk out of here and they're not going to know anything. They don't know anything about the Constitution. They don't know anything about their state constitution, who can do what, where they can do it at, and this, that, and you don't know where to look things up at. So I can appreciate that. So this is my introduction to this brother. I don't know if I'll ever do another reaction to him. But I'm going to continue breaking down videos. Sorry that people are disappointed, but point out where I was wrong or erroneous in what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Much love and peace.